Um, yeah, definitely on now. My name's Jonathan, I'm the minister here, and we're really pleased as part of our Passion for Life meetings tonight to be welcoming Kristian Dimond, who played for Crystal Palace and through the ups and downs of life ended up becoming a pastor, having served in Barry and now north of Hereford in Wellington. So Kristian, you're really welcome. We're really looking forward to hearing your story and what's happened. It's a slightly strange career move. So we'll find out about that. So the way of meeting, I'll hand over to Kristian in a moment and he's going to share with us. And then at the end, there'll be a chance to ask some questions if you'd like to do that. So you might want to think on the way through if there's something you think, I really like to find out about this, that, the other. Kristian said he doesn't mind responding to some questions at the end. And then hopefully we'll have a chance to have a cup of tea together for anyone who'd like to stay behind. So thank you for coming. Kristian, you're very welcome. I'll hand straight over to you. Thank you. I think I'll put that out of the way. There you are, isn't it?
Thank you. Oh, good evening. It's great to be here, and nice not to have to travel too far as well. I'm living in Hereford now, just up the road. But yes, Jonathan said my story is a bit unusual, how I come to be a pastor, and I can assure you it was absolutely the last thing I ever anticipated growing up, and even in my early adult life as well. So I grew up, I was born in Cardiff, I grew up in Barry in South Wales, and 2 younger brothers, and my home life was a bit of a mixed bag. So we weren't very well off, but we always had food on the table, so it wasn't kind of real poverty, but we were not particularly comfortable. And I have really happy memories of my childhood, but I also have quite dark memories in my childhood. My dad suffered with mental health problems most of his life, and anger issues as well. So kind of taking a beating was a regular thing, which that was quite normal. It didn't really bother me too much, but violence against my mum that I wasn't able to stop. They're the kind of vivid memories I have of my childhood that I can't quite get rid of. That was the painful moments. And really, I found my escapism in sport. I didn't really fit in very neatly in school because most of my footballing friends didn't really like school. We're in the kind of bottom set. But I did quite well at school, so I was in the top set, but all my friends in the school class were really geeky. And they were into like chess and board games and stuff. And so they hated football and rugby and all the sports that I was into. So I kind of flitted between these two worlds in my childhood. But really, it was football where I found my escapism. And my dad had been a semi-professional footballer, playing for Barry Town and Taftswell and a few other teams. And he didn't quite make it to professional, and I think he wanted to relive his opportunities through me, so he really heavily pushed me into football. I started playing 6 years old, I think I was, and back then in Barry there was no kind of mini football like you see now, where they got the mini goals and the small pitches, and it's just about having fun. There was none of that. It was under 10s was the youngest age group, full-size pitch, and you played to win. So first is first, second is nowhere. That was the kind of the emphasis from my dad, certainly, and the coaches. So I was the smallest, I was the weakest, I was the worst footballer in my team for a good few years. But I got used to playing with lads who were older than me. So I got used to that. And it was only really aged, I'd say about 10 or 11, that I started to get a bit more confidence. And then I was invited to play for the county, and then Cardiff City asked me to go and train with them. And then Swansea City said, we want to sign you. Forget trials and coming to train with us, we want to sign you. And the manager at the time was Jan Molby, and I grew up as a Liverpool fan. So Jan Molby was, legend. And I remember one summer, I spent the whole summer in Swansea training down there. I'd signed this kind of schoolboy contract, but he said to me, he pulled me aside one lunchtime, and I struggled to listen to what he was saying, because all I kept thinking was, Jan Molby knows my name. This is so cool. And I thought he was pulling me over for a chat to tell me, time's up, you're not good enough, off you go back to Barry, lad, go back to playing local league football. But he shocked me because he said, I don't want you playing for the under-14s anymore. I think I was 12 at this point. You're not playing for the under-14s anymore. I want you playing for the under-18s. And I thought, I'm already playing 2 years above my age group. These are men. I'm just going to get bullied even more, and I'm even weaker and even slower than all them. And he said, by the time you're 15, I want you training with me, with the first team. And he told me about a few other clubs that were watching me, and so they were going to offer me this long contract, which they did. They offered me a schoolboy contract, a youth contract, and then even a professional contract at the end of it. So I'm 12 years old. I don't know what to even say to that. And then came all this other interest. It shouldn't have come because the rules back then were you were not supposed to go to an English club until you were 14 years old. So English clubs were not even supposed to approach you or your parents or the club you were playing for. Those were the rules. Nobody listened to the rules. And so my parents were getting approached. I was directly getting approached. And the main team to come forward was Crystal Palace. And they invited me and my family to go off to London for the weekend. And they wined and dined my parents and just showed us a different world, really. I think Crystal Palace were in the Premier League at that time. They kind of yo-yoed between the Premier League and the Championship, but Swansea were in the second division, so the budget was vastly, vastly different. They were putting my parents up in this 5-star hotel and VIP tickets here, there and everywhere, so it was like a different world. And Crystal Palace offered to match the contract that Swansea had offered. And it was just too good an opportunity to turn down. But I couldn't sign until my 14th birthday, otherwise it would breach the rules. So I kind of had a pre-contract agreement in place, and then they paid this guy to come and pick me up every Friday or Saturday, take me down to London, stay with the family, play for the youth team, and then watch the first team, and then they bring me back home ready to go to school again on a Monday. So that was my weekends for over a year. But with all that success and kind of accolades and attention brought some trouble, particularly in school. There are a few people, one lad in particular, who was quite jealous of me playing football and decided he wanted to make my life hell. And I ended up getting into a few scraps in school. One in particular, when I'd always tried to control an anger that I knew was inside me, but I knew I didn't want to end up like my dad, so I worked really, really hard to suppress that. But one day I failed. And when this lad who'd been picking on me hit me in the back of the head, I tried to get to the office to avoid that anger spilling over and confrontation. And this was the day before I was due to sign for Crystal Palace. And I knew what his tactic was. He was trying to get me into trouble in school so I would be suspended and it would ruin the big day because the newspapers would come in and they were making a bit of a deal of it. And he succeeded. I turned around and I hit him. Only once, but it was enough. He had glasses on and I smashed his glasses and he was on the floor. And I dreamt about that moment for a long, long time. But I thought it would feel good and it didn't. Because all I kept thinking of is, just like your dad. And I kind of made a promise to myself. I didn't believe in God back then, so I just promised myself I'm never going to do that again. And thankfully, I didn't. And it did ruin my day. So I was suspended from school for 2 days, and the school had to ring Crystal Palace and say, "Don't bother coming down. You won't be here." So they realised things were not quite right in school. And they also caught wind that things were not quite right at home as well with the violence. I don't know how they found that out, but they did. And so they made plans to get me to London earlier than scheduled. So they wanted me to leave home at 15 before doing my GCSEs. So my dad didn't care about education. He just said, yeah, go for it, be a footballer. Whereas my mum was insistent on me carrying on my education. So she brokered this deal with the club that I would go in a proper school and carry on my GCSEs as normal, and they were willing to pay for private schools or private tuition. And I just said, no, I want to go to a normal school and just be normal. So that's what we did, and it broke my mum's heart, leaving home at 15. She was scared, but the club paid for a family to look after me. And so they did my washing and my ironing and took me to school, and I was paid to go to school, and this kind of new life began, this new world. I ended up with a sponsored car, sponsorship deals with Adidas and Nike, free tickets to do pretty much whatever I wanted, and even though I had this money, I couldn't really spend it because everything was free. So it was a bizarre lifestyle, and borrowing money to my own family when you're 15 years old was, it felt really cool. It felt lovely to be able to help. But unfortunately, a few weeks after I left home, my mum and dad split up, and they ended up getting divorced. And so I began this kind of dual life. So in London, I had all this amazing stuff going on, where everything was perfect and amazing. I'd met a girl in school, so I'd found love and success with the football. I was now beginning to travel the world as well, because I'd got into the Welsh squad, which amazing privilege to do that. But then I'd go home and visit my family in Barry, and it was just bedlam. I used to have to take it in turns who I would stay with, my mum or my dad. My dad had tried to take my mum's life a few times. He threatened all kinds of crazy things and did some crazy things while I was there. And so I never really wanted to go home, but I did for the sake of seeing my family. But London was an escape. It felt like it wasn't even real. It was like a dream. It just wasn't ending. And then I got to a point, I'd just come back from playing for Wales, I think it was, I was playing against Italy, and then I played in a tournament for Crystal Palace against a couple of Italian teams. And when I got back, the manager of Crystal Palace pulled me in his office, and he basically said, there are clubs trying to sign you, but we've already told them you're not available at any price. And I said, can I ask who? And he said, Inter Milan. And at that time, Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo, the Brazilian, was playing for Inter Milan. And I was a defender, and I thought, wow, imagine what it'd be like to train every day against Ronaldo. Whoever I played against on the weekend is going to be nowhere near as good as him, so that would really kind of equip me to be one of the best defenders in the world. And that was my aspiration. I didn't just want to be a decent Premier League player. I wanted to be playing for the Inter Milans, the Real Madrids, the big, big teams. And so I was a bit frustrated that I wasn't even consulted about this. I was told, because I was effectively owned by Crystal Palace. So I didn't really have much choice in the matter anyway. However, I hadn't signed the extension to the contract. So the professional contract, you had to sign another contract itself. So I could have waited and left if I wanted to. My agent told me, forget Inter Milan, Tottenham are trying to sign you, and they're offering a ridiculous amount of money. They can't pay you yet because of all the rules in place, but they're going to give the money to your mum, and then they're going to give you a signing on fee when you turn 17. Now this money would have paid off my mum's mortgage and some. My mum was working 3, maybe 4 jobs at the time as a single parent to pay the mortgage. So I knew this was life-changing for my mum, not just me. Tottenham were offering to quadruple the wage offer of Crystal Palace as well. So they were really splashing the cash. But Crystal Palace had been good to me, and I didn't know what to do. So I just said to my agent, I just need some time to think about it. And he was going mad because he just wanted me to sign for Tottenham because he was on 10% of what I was earning. So he just was thinking about the money. He didn't care about me. And then I got injured, ironically against Tottenham. And you get injured in football. I thought nothing much of it. I knew it was quite bad. I knew I'd broken my ankle, but you can recover from a broken ankle in a few weeks, maybe a month. But I didn't recover. So they explored a little bit further, and they said, oh no, you've done ligament damage as well. It's going to be quite a few months. And that was probably the loneliest time that I experienced as a professional footballer, because you're not part of anything. People will give you a nod, or the first team manager might say now and again, oh, how's things? But that's about it. You're not in the team banter. You're not travelling with the first team and getting involved in that sense. And it was just very lonely. You're in the gym every day doing rehab stuff. Very, very boring, very lonely. And then I found a lump, which I had to get investigated, and I was seeing somebody probably within 2 days, because it was all private medical care, and they said, oh, we think it's a problem, you need an operation to remove it. And I started panicking then, thinking, oh, my football career could be over, my life could be over if I've got cancer and there's this lump. And then I was on the operating table about to have this operation, and the surgeon, the scanning thing again, and he said, I'm cancelling the operation. There is no issue here. And I don't understand what's gone on, because the guy who diagnosed you is like the best. He doesn't make mistakes. He's top notch. But he said, maybe someone up there is looking out for you. And it was just like a throwaway comment. And I laughed, because I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe there was anyone out there. And I just thought, great, I'm fine. And I just got on with my life again. And all I was thinking about was playing football again. I didn't really think about anything else. That just dominated my thoughts. And things started to get to me, because my ankle wasn't getting any better, and people who I was way ahead of in the pecking order were now starting to get really good opportunities in the first team. And I just panicked, and I started a series of lies, which I'm ashamed of. So when the physios would kind of move my ankle around and say, does this hurt, does that hurt, I would say no, that's fine. Inside I was grimacing. I was taking painkillers in quantities I shouldn't have been, and I just wanted to play football again. And inevitably I made my injury 10 times worse by doing that. And it got to the point where I was maybe 18, coming on 19 years old, and Cardiff City came in for me, and Crystal Palace said, yep, you can have him for free. We won't charge a penny. Crystal Palace knew, and the medical team especially, and physios knew, I was done. I was finished as a footballer. I'd wrecked myself because I'd lied. Now these days they don't trust footballers. They scan you. If they're unsure, they'll do a scan, because if you get the footballers who just want to play football, they will lie and they will exaggerate, or they will play things down because we're stupid. We're not very sensible. So I went to Cardiff, and I thought, I need to hide this injury from the medical team, so I just need to lie again. And I did, and I think I got away with it for a little while, and then about 18 months later I was dribbling the ball around the pitch just before training with a couple of Welsh teammates, and I just audibly, I was thinking it, but I said it audibly, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. And my teammate said, what do you mean, what are you talking about? And I said, I can't even feel the ball at my feet. My ankle was that numb, it was that swollen. I was wearing a bigger size boot on my right to my left to allow for the swelling. Taking, I don't know how many painkillers at the time, and I just thought, enough's enough. So I went in the office and I cancelled my contract as a professional footballer. So I was 20 years old, and that was that. The manager was great. Lenny Lawrence was the manager, and he said, look, I know about the injury. I know you've been trying to hide it, and I know you're panicking now that your dream's over. Do not lose the plot. You know, there's more to life than football and all this kind of stuff. And I just wasn't ready to hear that. And he suggested that maybe I should try playing semi-professionally, and I might get away with it. So I did that for a little while, but same issue. It just wasn't recovering. And I did lose the plot. And I turned to drink and womanizing, essentially. And that's where I found my escapism. I didn't bother seeing my family. And I was in a pretty dark place. I don't think I was sober for several months, and didn't know really what to do with my life. I wasn't a stereotypical footballer in the sense that I didn't have an education. I did. I knew, deep down, I knew I was capable of finding a job and holding down a job, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a footballer. And I kind of thought all this good stuff that's happened to me in my life has come through football. So if I'm not a footballer, I'm no one. I'm nothing. And the girl I'd met in school, she left me at that time because I wasn't a very nice person to be around, rightly so. But then she just came back out of the blue and turned up, and she said, I want us to make a go of it again without football in our lives. And she confessed that she'd always hated football, which is amazing to hear, because I'd always had that thought, was she only with me because I was a footballer? And now here she was saying, I was with you in spite of the fact that you were a footballer. That kind of put me off you. And that was really quite amazing, because she wanted to be with me for me. And I thought, yeah, come on then, let's do it. And we just got jobs, we got engaged, planning our wedding, and everything was going really well. And Carla fell pregnant, and we were all just really excited. And I was getting my life kind of on track again. I wasn't drinking anymore. And unfortunately, that child didn't make it. And I prayed for the first time in my life at the Heath Hospital car park. It wasn't a very nice prayer. It was angry, and I just shouted at God. A God I didn't even believe in, but all this anger just came out, and I just shouted, all I'd ever wanted to be is a footballer, you've taken that away from me. All this woman that I love has ever wanted to be is a mum, and you've taken that away from her. I hate you. That was my prayer, my first ever prayer. Nothing happened. I wasn't struck down or anything like that, but I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel a response. Nothing happened. We just got on with life, but we knew we just wanted to get away. I was getting pretty fed up with people coming up to me in the street asking, why did you quit? My son would give his right arm for the opportunities you had. Why did you throw it all away? Where's the baby? And I just said to Carla, we've got to get away. I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of this town, the city. Let's just go. And so we decided to plan this trip to Thailand, and we'd get married out there, and maybe we'd live there. Who knows? So that's what we did. We booked that for Christmas. I'm really excited, looking forward to it. But then Carla fell pregnant again, and we realised she would have been too heavily pregnant to fly. So we had to cancel the wedding, cancel our holiday, cancel this big trip. And we were sat there on Boxing Day at my nan's house in Barry, and Thailand came on the news. And we was like, oh, that's weird. Like, we should be there right now. And started feeling sorry for ourselves, and then we realised the sad news of this tsunami that had hit. And we were just sitting there, like, quite overwhelmed. I didn't know what to think. Like, I should be there right now. And we found out that the hotel where we were due to stay was just annihilated. There were hardly any survivors, like literally hundreds of thousands of people dying. And my nan said exactly the same words as the surgeon. She said, Kristian, maybe there's someone up there looking out for you. And this time I didn't dismiss it. I kind of thought, like, what if? What if there is a God? And what if there's some purpose to my life? And what if I'm supposed to be alive for a bit longer? And I don't know why, but what if I wasn't supposed to be a footballer? And it was quite a lovely thought, to feel wanted, to have purpose, to have hope, and to be loved. And all these things were really warming feelings. But then the feeling that kind of overshadowed all that was, why would anyone save you after all the horrible things you've done in your life? And that, unfortunately, was the dominant voice, and that was the one I went with at that time. So I carried on not believing in God, because I didn't think I deserved to experience that kind of level of love. But we did. Our first son was born shortly afterwards, Kieran, in March 2005. We went on to have lots more children, so we got 5 children, and at the moment 2 foster children as well, who are soon to be adopted. And so by the age of 29, I had 3 children. We were married. I'd started working for a company and kind of worked my way up to basically running the sales force of that company. And I was earning a lot of money. And I had a 5-bedroom detached house, brand new Mercedes. We were going to Florida, Milan, Paris, anywhere we wanted really. But I always wanted more. And I just thought, I'm just a really ungrateful person. That's just who I am. And my wife was the same. So to give you an example, the day after I took delivery of my brand new Mercedes, I was in the Audi garage looking at a different car. Because I wanted bigger, better, extra. something more, always chasing that little bit more. And you get it, and then it was like, okay. And it just never seemed to satisfy. And I felt so guilty about it, because most of my family and my friends, to them, we had the perfect life. Married, 3 kids, big house, nice car, lovely holidays. What more do you want? Well, I wanted more. And I just didn't know why I wanted more, or what I wanted or needed. And then my wife started going to this toddler group in a local church. And then they invited her to this event, kind of like this, for ladies. And she come home that night and said, I've become a Christian. And I'd like to read some verses to you. Where's that New Testament that your customer gave you? So I used to have lots of customers who were Christians, and they'd often give me a tract or a Bible or something. And I used to throw them in the bottom of the cupboard. And years later, I thought, why didn't I just throw them in the bin? But I didn't. Threw them in the bottom of the cupboard. And so my wife dug out this New Testament and started reading these verses from John's Gospel that she'd heard like an hour before. And to her, they were like miraculous, amazing words. And I'm just sat in bed watching telly, and she's reading these verses. And as she's reading them, she's like looking up, waiting for my response. And then she'd look at me again, and she was expecting me to go, oh, that's amazing, that's so amazing. And I didn't. I just kind of looked at her thinking, you're mentally ill, you're losing your mind. What is wrong with you? And she was just distraught. She couldn't understand. She's like, are you not hearing what this says? And I was like, yeah, I can hear what you're saying, but what is wrong with you? So that was quite disheartening for her, but she didn't give up. And she carried on praying for me and carried on inviting me to church, but I kept saying no. But the bit that convinced me to go was I couldn't deny the change in her life. So she now had this contentment, this peace, and she just changed. And it was tangible. I could see it, and I wanted it, but I just didn't want to have to go to church to get it. And so I was being stubborn. And eventually I kind of gave in, and I said, okay, I can see how much it meant to her. I did it for her, really. And I thought it was quite lovely that the kids would get to go to Sunday school. I never got that. So we went, but I didn't feel anything. I just thought, these are lovely people in church, but they're not like me. They haven't done the things that I've done in my life. I don't deserve to be a Christian. And so I just went to church and tried to occupy myself, and I noticed that somebody sat in the same seat every week, so I'd go and sit in their seat just to kind of have a bit of banter and have a laugh and wind them up a little bit and maybe have a little argument with them. And that would be my excuse then that I could not come back, or I'd hide away in creche every week with my little one. And then one day I was sat in a sermon, and the pastor was preaching through Corinthians on how to be a godly parent and godly partner. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm neither of those things. I'm not a godly husband, I'm not a godly dad. I thought I was a good dad, but I just spent a lot of money on my kids. I just lavished them with expensive things, but I wasn't a good dad. And I certainly wasn't a good husband. And I felt really convicted by this message, and I actually started to listen properly. And then I had a bit of a moment, and I didn't feel what you hear a lot of Christians say, oh, when I came to faith, I felt this kind of overwhelming love and joy and peace. I didn't feel any of that. I just felt quite afraid. I just felt this overwhelming fear that there is a God. He's real. There is actually a God. And if I die today, I'm not going to heaven. I'd always kind of thought, if there's a God, I'll probably be all right. I know I've done some bad stuff, but I'm not like a murderer or a rapist or anything that bad. So I'll be okay. I'll just about get in. But in that moment, on that day, I knew I wasn't getting in. I was out, properly out. And that was quite scary. And so I said to my wife, I can't go back to church. She could see for the first time I was starting to engage. And eventually, I did go back. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to read this for myself. Never mind what the preacher says. I'm going to read the Bible. And I did. And the first time I read it, I remember getting to Romans. I read it really quickly, and I got to Romans, and where it says, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I thought, that's everyone. And that's everyone in church. So all these lovely people that I kind of put myself way, way below them in the pecking order, in the good order. Like I'm down there and they're like up here. But God's standard is like up here. All have fallen short. I thought, like, I'm in the same boat as them lot. But then I carried on reading, and then the wages for sin is death. And I thought, that's bad. That's talking about eternal death. That's hell. But the free gift is eternal life in Christ Jesus. And I thought, this is not about me. It's not about how good or bad I am, or what I've done or what I've not done. This is about Jesus. And so then I kind of went back to the Gospels and started rereading those, and kind of grace made sense for the first time in my life, that this salvation, this heaven, this eternal life, I couldn't get it, but Jesus got it. And it was a gift, and I just needed to receive it and accept it, and accept him for who he is as God. And then everything did change. Then I felt the love and the joy and the peace and that contentment, and that all kind of came. Parts of my life changed overnight. So my language, my speech, I just stopped swearing. I didn't try. I didn't pray about it. I didn't work hard at it. I just stopped using bad language. It was quite amazing. But then other parts didn't change overnight, and I knew I needed to work hard because I didn't want them to remain. And the reason I'm telling you this is some people kind of describe being a Christian and going to church and reading the Bible as, oh, your life's pretty rubbish, and then you become a Christian and your life's amazing. It's all a bed of roses and it's wonderful. In actual fact, it can get harder. But the end goal is eternal life. And the journey getting there can be quite difficult. So I just want to be honest with you about that. If you're here tonight and you're not a Christian, read the Bible for yourself. Get along to a local church, absolutely. But don't expect overnight changes. Some changes take a long time. And then just to kind of wrap up, sorry if I'm talking too long, just kind of wave at me, Jonathan, if you want me to stand down, I will, happily. I think a weird thing I experienced not long after that moment was I felt like I should be telling people about Jesus. And I didn't know what that looked like, and it didn't really make sense because I'd only been a Christian for 5 minutes. But I didn't want to. I was happy in my job. And kind of wrestled with that for a long time, and then eventually I went and spoke to my pastor maybe a year later, and I said, I know this sounds mad, but I think I'm supposed to be doing something maybe full-time for God, for the church, I don't know. And he laughed, and I thought, all right, it's not that funny. But he laughed because the first Bible study I did with him, he spoke to his wife after I left and said, I think that guy's going to be called to ministry. And his wife laughed and said, he's not even a Christian. What are you talking about? I didn't know. The first Bible study I did, the pastor was talking about Moses. And I said, I don't know, who's Moses? I'd never heard of Moses. And he was like, okay, we're really starting from the basics with you. I didn't have a clue. I just didn't listen to all that stuff in primary school, and I didn't go to Sunday school, so I just never knew. So it didn't make any sense logically, but he just had a feeling. God revealed that to him. And so then began a journey of, what does this look like? Am I supposed to be an evangelist or a pastor or a preacher, or what do I do? I did some youth work. I went to loads of different churches around England and Wales, and then really fortunate to get invited to some other churches in other places in Europe. And it was just a wonderful experience. And went to Bible college for 3 years, became an assistant pastor in Barry. So the church where I'd entered as an unbeliever, they watched me come to faith, become an apprentice pastor, and then I was their pastor. And that was just amazing for me how teachable and humble those people were. And then 5-6 years ago, a church in Wellington, just north of Hereford, asked me to go up there, to leave my church in Barry and help them and pastor that church. There were 12 members at the time. And I remember thinking, what am I doing? Why have I agreed to this? My children had left a church where there were over 50 children in the Sunday school to a church in a village where they were the Sunday school. But praise God, the last 5 years we've really grown, and lots of families, lots of children. We've got no more space on a Sunday morning, so we're looking at planting a church or extending a few other things. So God's been amazing to us. But I'd really value your prayers for that ongoing work, practical stuff. But I will shut up now. Sorry. But yeah, happy to answer any questions if anyone's got them as well.
Well, let's do that then.
Yeah.
Straight away.
Yeah, great. I'm just going to grab a quick drink.
Shall I kick off with a question? There were two things that you said really struck you on your roller coaster journey. One was this phrase, "Is someone looking after you?" Or someone up there looking after you. And the other was a feeling that something was missing. You always wanted more. Do you think there are other people who feel like that? Or was it something unique to you?
No, I think there are definitely other people who feel like that. And this feeling of, I'm sure there's more to life than this. And I'm sure that someone's looking out for me. I'm sure that this is not just all coincidence. I remember when I first read verses about God knowing us before we were even born, before we were even in the womb and all that. And I thought, that's kind of rattling my brain a little bit. And then I thought, hang on. Even while I was an enemy of God and I was hating him and not even believing in him, he was still caring for me. And that was really overwhelming. And I think that is a thought that a lot of people do have, that they just can't put it all together. It doesn't quite make sense, but it's there. It's kind of inbuilt into us when we're made to worship and to be children of God. We just don't know what that looks like until we come to know Jesus, until we read the Bible. So yeah, I think that is something that will be a common thing for a lot of people. I've certainly met a lot of people in the 11 years I've been a Christian who've had a similar experience, similar feeling that I just want more. I've heard it described as there's a God-shaped void in our hearts and only he can fill it. That might sound a bit cheesy, but that's kind of what I'm saying, that there's always going to be that void. And we try and fill it with stuff. And for a little while we think, that's it, that's done it, I feel great. And then after a while it's like, no, actually, I don't think that is the case. It's not quite there. Yeah. Not just me. Yeah, sorry.
You said that the first prayer that you prayed
Yeah.
But do you reflect on that kind of thing? God was working in me at that time.
Yeah.
But it was
I really do, because the bitterness that I had over not being a footballer, I wanted to blame somebody. And in that moment, I was blaming a God that I didn't believe in, which is illogical. But I was still doing that to work through this anger and this bitterness and this frustration that I had. And then I think about the impact it had on my wife as well. That moment, even just talking about that moment, she never comes with me when I share my testimony, because it brings up so much emotion. Even now, even after having 5 children, it's as if it happened yesterday. But she has this compassion and this love for children, not just her own children. That's proven in the fostering that we're doing at the moment. And I think I can not trace it to that moment, but that moment really stands out as being quite pivotal in our lives, and really impacted us both in different ways, but in really important ways as well. Mixed. So really close to my mum now, and we're trying to see her as much as possible. It was really hard when we left and moved from Barry. We lived next door but one. So my children after school go over to Nan's. It was a regular thing. So leaving was really difficult, but I tried to reassure my mum by saying, look, Mum, the other 2 churches that I was considering going to, one was in London and the other was in America. So Hereford's the nearest by a long way. So I'll be grateful for that. But really, really close to my mum. Sadly, my dad not so. I've not seen my dad in 15 years. Yeah, something pretty extreme happened involving my children, and that was kind of the crunch point that I think you can forgive somebody in your heart, but practically it's not always wise to still carry on that relationship. And that's really the position that we came to. Yeah. So, still pray for him and still anticipate that one day I'm going to be preaching in church on a Sunday and he'll probably walk in through the back door and, I'm not sure it'll be a prodigal son moment, but I hope there will be some sort of opportunity for reconciliation.
Do you still play, Kristian, in any capacity?
Not really, no. I played in a few charity games, UNICEF and a few others, and paid the price for it. Yeah, and I kind of got to the point where I was doing a weekend for a church in Swindon, and they invited me to come down. There was over 100, 200, I can't remember, a load of men. Not Christians, and they just playing in this tournament, and they asked me to referee the tournament, and then kind of done what I've done tonight, share my story with these guys. But when I turned up, the team playing in black were one short. Of course, I was due to referee, so I had a black top on, and they said, "Oh, would you mind just stepping in?" And I did, and that was the last time I played, because I was limping for a long, long time after that. And so yeah, I've taken advice that if I want to kick a ball around with my kids and not walk with a limp for the rest of my life, don't play football again.
Can I ask a second cheeky question?
Yeah, sure.
Probably the question you've been asked the most ever. Who's the best footballer you've played against?
Okay. When I was a kid, I think the best was Jermaine Pennant or Joe Cole. And then when I got a little bit older, a guy called Daniel De Rossi. He was playing for Italy when I played against him. I think he played for Roma. He was captain of Roma for many, many years. He was like a man when he was 15. He had his two quads were my waist. He was just a machine. Yeah, fantastic footballers.
How was your close friends when you found that Kristian and the change with it, stopping using bad language and the change?
Yeah, that's a bit of a running joke, because we used to have a bit of a joke with me and my wife, how long it would take my friends to realise I wasn't joking. When they said to me, "Dimond, what are you up to these days?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a pastor now in a church." They were like, "Yeah, good one. What are you really doing?" And it used to take me ages to try and convince them, "No, I'm not messing around. This is legit. This is what I'm doing." So yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. To give you a kind of an insight into my upbringing and company that I kept, my two best friends growing up in Barry, one of them died 2 years ago from drug-related issues, and the other one is currently serving a 25-year sentence for dealing drugs. So yeah, that was my course. Football originally, my mum always said, football saved you from that. Now, in hindsight, I don't think it was football. It was God. But he used football as a means to help me escape that. Yeah. But yeah, lots of good opportunities, and that was part of the reason why leaving Barry was so difficult, because a lot of my friends and family were starting to come to the church, and some of them came to faith as well. So, very exciting. Question.
Are there any particular teams that you follow at the moment, or do you have no interest?
Well, my uncle forced me to support Liverpool from a young age, and the first match he made me watch was Liverpool versus Everton, and it was 4-4. It's a fantastic game, and I just assumed then after that every other football match was going to be as good and entertaining, which it hasn't been in the last many years. So yeah, Liverpool I would say are my main team, but I do keep a lookout for Cardiff and Crystal Palace as well. Results go. Cardiff, obviously. I hope so, but it's not looking great, is it? Probably Leeds. Yeah.
Do you want to say any other teams?
No. Ipswich?
That's a good answer.
That is an Ipswich shirt, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, my first game for Cardiff was for the reserves. I signed on the Tuesday afternoon, and Lenny Lawrence said, "Are you fit?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Great. It's Norwich away tomorrow evening." So I had to travel all the way to, not quite Ipswich, but just down the road.
Did you win?
I think it was 0-0. Really exciting game. Yeah.
Did you play any other sports, like chess?
I did actually, yeah. I played all the geeky stuff as well. Because really, my mum wanted me to go down the academic route. So I was a bit of a disappointment, I think, to my mum in that side of it. So I had teachers kind of taking me to Cambridge and King's and all that stuff. And I think her aspirations were for me to be a barrister or a surgeon or something. But unfortunately, I disappointed her. It was the physical stuff, because it was cool to play rugby and football and be good at all those sports. It wasn't really cool to be the champion chess player in school, so that, yeah, that's why I didn't go down that route.
So you have two foster children that are preparing to be adopted, and I didn't know whether that was within your family or you're preparing them for adoption.
Another family, yeah. So we had a real kind of strong burden, mainly my wife, going back probably about 10 years ago, and we were quite enthusiastic about our faith when the local council came round, which wasn't a good, wise decision, because they just thought these are wacky, extremist religious people. And that put us off, because they were like, oh, you can't take them to church, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, you can't read Bible stories. And so we said, forget it then, I'm not doing it. But then I was preaching a couple of years ago on how to be godly kind of step parents, if you like, or non-biological parents. And my wife just felt quite convicted on that Sunday, and said, I think we need to revisit the fostering, and we did, and we spoke to the local council, very open, and said, look, I'm a pastor, we are Christians, we do read Bible stories to our kids, like, how does that sit with you? And they were like, oh yeah, great, all of our best foster carers are Christians in Hereford, so amazing. So it was so refreshing, and it just felt like, right, now's the time that we're supposed to do this. Yeah, my wife's the main carer. I try and do little bits of support where I can, but I'm kind of more interested in the effects of trauma. I've looked into that quite a bit, spoken at a few places on that topic. Difficult topic, but necessary one, I think, from pastoral care and counselling point of view, children and adults. Sorry, there was somebody else.
Watch some of the top special football games. You score goals, jumping around, you see a lot of this.
Yeah.
Looking up to heaven. Is it because they're real Christians, or religious?
I think they're probably a mix. I mean, who am I to say who's a real Christian? I think the Bible directs us. How we're to know is a Christian is someone who has love for other Christians and who bears fruit. So somebody who says that they have a faith in Jesus, who is a Christian, who wants to celebrate by praising him or looking heavenward. If that's what they say, then fair enough. I'll take them for their word. But ultimately, I think our lives have got to match what we say. It won't perfectly. We're always going to be hypocrites in some capacity, but it was only ever Jesus who completely matched his words with actions. But yeah, I've definitely met people like Gavin Peacock, for example, definitely a genuine Christian. He's now a pastor in Canada. There's several golfers as well on the PGA Tour. Zach Johnson, for example, who I know is definitely a true believer. But yeah, sport, I think it's hard to be a faithful Christian in sport these days, because certainly my experience, is everything about the lifestyle and the banter and everything about it is leading you to not be. That makes sense. I can't really talk any more about that, but yeah. So the ones who are standing firm, I've got the utmost admiration for them, and they definitely need our prayer support because it's a tricky environment. It's like the military guys. I know quite a few military guys who are faithful Christians, and they say the same thing. It's every day. It's a challenge. Thanks for the question.
Have you ever considered chaplaincy into sport rather than pastor of a local church?
Yeah, I did, and I looked into it. Did a little bit of work in an open prison in Bridgend, and really kind of went down that route a little bit, and then it didn't quite happen. The church in Barry were really keen for me to be involved there, so that's what I did. But then when I came to Wellington and Hereford, I thought because it was such a small congregation, I would have time to maybe do some chaplaincy as well. And Christians in Sport asked me to do some work with them to help not just footballers, but sports people who've had to retire early through injury or didn't make it, or just retire at a normal age, which can be as young as 35, and how they cope with that when they haven't got people recognising them on the street, they haven't got thousands of people chanting their name, and how do you manage that mentally? Where's your identity and things like that? But it didn't happen, it didn't materialise for two reasons. One, the church grew really quick in Wellington, so I was too busy to do that. But also the chap that I was due to meet to start this work was Cyril Regis, and he died the week before I was due to meet him. So that connection was kind of severed, and that was the end of that. But I wouldn't rule it out long term. I think that's it. Great. Thank you very much.
Kristian, thank you. I think you can judge by the questions that people were really engaged with what you shared, and really grateful to you for telling your story, that life is a roller coaster, certainly has been for you. And I think what struck me most was the way in which, even though you didn't know it, you sensed that there was a guiding hand behind what was happening in your life, even the downs as well as the ups, that made you consider that perhaps was a God out there worth thinking about and discovering how you could meet him. So really thought it was very helpful. I'm sure you'd be happy to chat to people over a cup of tea, which we'll have in just a moment. If you do want to explore the Christian faith, and maybe tonight's just made you think, maybe there is someone out there watching over me, I wonder how we could get to know him, then our church does offer some great ways to do that. We run a course called the Explore course, or you could even just come along on a Sunday, but we've got some great ways of being able to explore that in a relaxed way. So do contact me or contact us, speak to me afterwards. Be really happy to help with that. Also like to invite you to our next Passion for Life event, which just happens to be this Saturday at 3 o'clock, where, as the old adage is, now for something completely different. We've got a visiting entertainer called Steve Legg, who mixes, well, what can we say, comedy and magic and things like that. It's aimed at families, but everyone is likely to enjoy it, so I've been told. No, that's true, isn't it? For those of you who've seen Steve. So you're really welcome to come at 3 on Saturday and just come and enjoy it. It's a free event again, and it'll be really great to see you. We wish you all a really happy Easter as well. It's only a week or so away. Do stay for a cuppa. Thank you all for coming tonight. Please once again say thank you to Kristian. Thank you.